Hello, friends. Well, welcome to this week's Mystic Moment. I could not resist but allow this one to focus on Theresa. Since we have our vigil with her tomorrow, Tuesday, 5 p.m., and if you're watching this video because you are a free member, you can upgrade to $11.11 to enjoy the evening with us, or even just get the recording if you're too busy. I could not resist letting today's Mystic Moment be a bit about Theresa. And I was curious to explore two concepts that are big in her work, and that is union with God and grace. Union with God and grace. And I would like for you to translate what you mean in relation to the word God, because we could substitute in almost anything. In her language, it's a God that is the creator of all. She refers to this God in the masculine. And of course, that's not so true for us today, that something that's the creator of all would actually have an isolated gender. So, but I'm not going to kind of get really meticulous about my words. I want to use her words and invite you in to apply her concepts, because her concepts are pretty remarkable. Now, when we're talking about her teachings and her theology, which is, theology would be the study of God or this ineffable source from a deeply methodological viewpoint. And her theology comes 100% from her experience. Now, obviously, her experience is situated among a belief system that she doesn't really, the fundamental pieces of it, she doesn't question them. She doesn't really challenge them. So she's not trying to be a theologian, but she gives us a very hearty theology. And in her belief that we are made for union with God, she does notice or note that grace is the operative way this is accomplished. And I want to share with you 4 considerations for your own reflection on what is grace to you? What is grace? Okay, so the first contribution she gives in relation to these ideas is she gives to us that the spiritual journey is entirely initiated by and sustained by God's grace and not individual effort. That the soul cannot advance, she's very black and white, cannot advance through willpower or asceticism. That union with the divine is pure gift. And that's a very strong statement, especially from somebody who gives us methods for prayer that pull our willpower and our discipline in, don't they? But what she's pointing out with this is that this commitment, if you will, through prayer, through discipline, through intention, that is not us accomplishing something. That is us responding to an initiation that's already happening from the divine, and that it is tilling the soil to make it possible for the pure gift to take place. So here I've got a quote I want to read you from The Interior Castle, chapter 3, when she speaks about the 4th mansion. This, which she's calling about union, is not something that can be acquired through human efforts. It is bestowed by God alone, when God wills and as God wills. The soul may labor for many years in meditation, but in one instant, God can do more than we ourselves could do in 1,000 years. Here, with union, everything is God's doing. Now, that's an interesting statement, isn't it? where do you go with it? For me, my first thought is, it's not all on my shoulders. I can reframe my approach to my awakening process. And since my definition of God is that whose presence is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, that my center of my being is God, then this God is initiating from the center of my being. But then it begs a question, because it could then lead us down a path that could bring this about. But what if I give my all and I find out it's not meant for me? That what I long for more than anything in the world isn't mine, isn't meant to be mine. Because there's always a gap between a longing and its fulfillment. If a longing identifies that there is some urging, opening towards or opening for, and a longing can seem to say, well, I'm not there yet. And again, until we're fully awakened, it's true. In a way, we're not fully awakened yet. So there is something of a journey to be had. And it could be easy to become worried. Well, what if it's not meant for me? Now, again, Theresa, speaking from her experience, that's her beliefs come from her experience. She has 3 important statements here. The first is that God's desire exceeds our own. Another, that we can be overcome with desire, and yet the divine's desire exceeds our own. She gives example that God walks, as she says in her own words, among the pots and pans, that every instance is an instance where God is desiring us. God is seeking every possible occasion for union, and God is an ever generous host or hostess. Where is this hosting happening? Right in the interior castle of your being. So let me read her quote from The Way of Perfection, chapter 27 of Theresa. His Majesty is a very good friend. If you don't know Theresa, she just loves calling God His Majesty. And that's a not so hierarchical as it may seem. God never tires of giving. God desires far more than we desire Him, her. If we love God, we shall never be lacking in receiving from this God. The second point that she wants to give us assurance so we have confidence is there is no wasted opening. When we make space, that space is flooded with presence. God responds. There is always response. And in this, I take it from her Book of the Life, chapter 8, where she says, God never tires of giving, nor can God be exhausted. Let us never tire of receiving. What if that was our whole work? What if we framed it as our whole work is to never get tired of receiving? A single drop of water poured into God's ocean is never lost. Every little act of love is treasured. And then the third theological contribution she gives us around this grace and union, transformation is certain, though it's not as you imagine it to be. Now I'm going to give my little insert here. How could it be how you imagine? If transformation is, as Theresa says, a silkworm turning into a butterfly, how could a silkworm even imagine what a butterfly is like being a butterfly? It is beyond imagining. Imagination sparks the curiosity and the intention, but it is beyond what we could possibly know. So of course it's not going to be as we imagined. She says so well, it will surprise us. And she says in the interior castle in the 6th mansion, chapter 1, she's referring here, let us not think that if God does not grant us sweetness and rapture, God is withholding. God's love may be shown in any number of ways. Transformation is certain. So this is her contribution in the understanding of union and grace. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope it gets you thinking, like, what is grace to me? And even more, I hope you join us tomorrow evening, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. Blessings, my friends.